Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, stood up and said, "There's a young boy here, but all he has is 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. There's no way that can feed 5,000 people," which actually wasn't 5,000 people. Again, we've talked about this before. At that time, they only counted the men. There was 5,000 men, add some women, their wives, their children. They estimate that there was 20,000 people. 5 pieces of bread, 20,000 people. Humanly speaking, this is what? Impossible. They're still looking at what they don't have and not realizing what they do have in their presence. Jesus. They've already seen Jesus do all kinds of other miracles, but in this moment, they're forgetting what Jesus has the power to do. And that's you and I often. We see that we only have 5 pieces of bread. We only have a couple eggs, right? And we don't recognize that in those 5 pieces of bread or whatever it is for you, Jesus can do something amazing with it. Jesus can do immeasurably more than you ever imagined that you could do with your smile, with your eyes, with your handshake, if that's allowed, with your hug, with your greeting to your neighbor. Whatever it is, it's not just for you. Some of you guys in the room right now have the ability to light up a room when you talk to somebody. Don't keep that to yourself. You might feel like it's not much and it's only 5 pieces of bread, but give it away and see what God can do with it. Just give it away. Share it with somebody. It goes on to say, there's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good is that to this huge crowd? And Jesus says this. It's like he ignored what little they had and the excuses they were making. And he says, tell everyone to sit down, Jesus said. So they all sat down on the grassy slope. The men alone number 5,000 people, which I just told you is probably about 20,000 people. Jesus standing there, 5 pieces of bread. Then Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks to God and distributed them to the people. Afterward, he did the same with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. After everyone was full, Jesus told his disciples, now gather the leftovers so that there's nothing wasted. So they picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets with scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. Let's stop for a second and just look at somebody in this story that God spoke to me about this week, and maybe you've seen it too. Sometimes the overlooked character in this story that transformed the narrative was the little boy with the 5 pieces of bread. The little boy whose mommy probably packed his lunch, and whose mommy's probably said, don't let any of them bullies take that from you. Right? And whose mommy said, take care of that food because that's all we have. But that little boy was approached with the idea that if you would just give the little bit that you have to Jesus, if you would just give the little bit that you have to Jesus, that something miraculous might happen. He didn't know Jesus. He's 1 in 20,000 people there from afar. He felt like a little insignificant person with a bag of bread and 2 fish. And you might feel like that too. Insignificant. You don't have much. But at the sound of the voice of the men who came to him and said, hey, let Jesus use this. You're about to see something crazy. He didn't hold it back. He released it. Because he recognized that what he had left in his hands was minimal. But what he had put in God's hands was magical. Was incredible. That he could just keep getting more and more and more and more. And I love sweet rolls. Putting these here, I'm still going to try to eat them later. These sweet rolls are good. For me to use these for an illustration. Anybody else love a sweet roll? Yeah. You want me to throw you one? That little boy released what little he had into the hands of someone who could take something small and do something big. And that's the same for you and I. Don't fall into this false idea in the world that we live in today that says keep your 5 and stay alive. No. If you keep your 5, you are going to die with it. But if you will take what little you have and release it and be generous, you will find life. What that little boy did in that moment, and this is what I want you to grab a hold of too today. What that little boy did in that moment changed the people around him forever and changed his life forever. When he gave away those 5 pieces of bread, he did not know what could happen. And in that moment, he watched Jesus change it into thousands and thousands and thousands of provision for many, many people to eat. And if you would be willing to do the same, to start releasing what you have, even if it feels little, I promise you, because the scripture tells me so, that you will have a changed perspective too. As long as you keep it to yourself, that's all it's ever going to be. But if you'll begin to release it and let God do what God does, oh my goodness, you might see something you never expected.